Hey everybody, welcome back to the second part of our exercise. And this is going to be a really heavy exercise. So make sure that you guys have your pause button ready, that you've got your work ready and downloaded. And I'm going to try to go through this slowly and carefully. It's not hard, it's tedious. And as I've pointed out in the past, there's a lot of subtleties to Photoshop. So I want to make sure we catch every single step. So I've kind of written out what we're doing, and let me give you kind of an overall of what we want to do. Essentially what we're going to be doing is copying these two logos, the Cotopaxi logo and the Cotopaxi Do Good logo, into our image here. We are pretending that Cotopaxi is moving in and renting a space from here. So last week we learned how to resize images just using simple transform tools. But what we're going to do today is use something called the vanishing point filter that I've done here. So we're going to copy the layers in as we've done before. We're going to transform them to kind of get them to about the size that we want. And then we're going to copy a clip of what we want to paste into our vanishing point filter. So these two are new things. And then a third new thing, we're going to be adding layer effects. So buckle up and hold on, grab some snacks. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn this off for now. And let's start with our first Cotopaxi logo. And as we've done in the past, I'm just going to drag on the thumbnail preview, highlight over my artwork, and then once I bring it in, I let go, and now it's part of this project. As you can see, it's way too big. We've got really different pixel ratios here. So I'm going to go to my Command T for transform. And if you noticed, I cheated a little. I zoomed out, and the reason why I did that is I need to see these edges right here. So let's say when you bring it in, if you hit Control T, you might not even notice this little guy over here. Go ahead and hit Command or Control minus, or use your Alt roller ball on your mouse. And go ahead and resize this. Let me zoom in now while I'm still transforming. I want this logo, if you can see my cursor, I want it to fit about here. So I'm going to keep scaling that down. Then I'll move it up. I'll grab the bottom. I'm going to still scale it down a little bit more. I think that looks pretty good. That looks like a good size to start with. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and that's what we'll start working with. So go ahead and do that. And the next thing that we're going to do is add our vanishing point filter. Okay, if you're ready to move on, I'm going to go ahead and click on the art space building layer. It doesn't matter what layer you do this on, it'll just look at your entire image. So really you could be anywhere, but I just want to remind myself this is what I'm using as my base. For this, we want to go up to the top of our menu, and I'm sorry if it's cut off, but look up from the top, you'll see Photoshop, File, Edit. Go to where it says Filter, and we're looking for the vanishing point filter. Okay, now this might not work. Let me click off of this. If you don't have any layers selected, do you see how it's not working? Okay, make sure you're clicked on a layer. So again, Filter, Vanishing Point. And what we're going to do now is outline the perspective of this building. So if you've taken any of our drawing classes through the architecture or interior design program, you might already know what a vanishing point is. But basically in perspective, there is a line, an invisible line that all points will go to and meet. And what we're about to do now is set that point so anything that we want to bring in and add perspective to, we can easily do that. So what I'm going to do is essentially trace this building face. So you can see my cursor looks like a box. So I click on this corner and then I drag down. And then do you see that there's kind of this area where the brick stops? I'm just going to go to that point to get an idea of the building face. I'm going to try to find the opposite corner here. Okay, So once I do that, Photoshop creates this bounding box for me. And if you'll notice, my bounding box is red. That means it had kind of a hard time trying to find the perspective. So remember, Photoshop, it does a pretty good job of finding stuff, but it still is a computer. It still needs some help. So I'm going to try to move these points around. There we go. And see how now it's like, okay, I see there's a building face here. We know that it's ready to go when these blue lines come up. These are kind of our fake grid points that finds the building. And what I'm going to do is adjust these slightly. It might not be perfect to the building, but it will be close enough for me to at least continue working on it. One thing that's important is that these lines are parallel. So I don't want to come all the way out here because then it looks like, you know, the building face is at an angle. But if I keep them parallel, even if it's off the face, it'll still work. So here's what's great about this. If you wanted to like add a storefront, like pretend that there's an addition coming off the side, you can go ahead and keep this vanishing point filter off the building. I could even make it larger if I wanted to off of this side. But really the main thing that I'm looking for is right here on the face so that I can bring this logo here. Okay, so go ahead and get your vanishing point filter set up, and then I'm going to meet you guys back in the main file, and you do that by hitting OK. All right, so now we're back into the main file. You may have tried to put up your vanishing point a couple times. So this part will be a little bit different than what we've done in the past. We are going to copy a clip of a layer, not the entire layer. What I'm going to do to get started is I'm going to start a new group. So I'm going to click on this folder. Whoops, I put it inside ArtSpace. I actually want it to be on its own. And I'm going to call this group the Cotopaxi logo. And what I'll do is I will drag and drop the Cotopaxi logo I brought in. And I'll also call that Cotopaxi. Okay, so I've made a group of this. And the reason why I want to put it in a group is once we transform this with a vanishing point, we can't bring it back to this. So let's say that you want to take it back to the original. I always like to make a copy of this before I put it in the vanishing point layer. So this is going to be called Cotopaxi, and I might even add OG for like original, okay? Because essentially transforming it or adding the vanishing point doesn't necessarily destroy the pixels, but it does severely distort them to where we can't get them back to where they're nice and square like this. Now the next part, this is going to be the new thing. So in the past, when we have wanted to copy a layer, we hit Alt and we drag it and it makes a copy. But what I want to do now is just copy this particular portion. You may not realize it, but when you hit the Alt drag, it's copying everything. So if there are lots of different items on that layer, it's copying all of it. But it's easy to grab a portion of a layer, and what you do is you hold the Command or Control key down and then click on the thumbnail preview. I'm going to do that one more time. So hold your Command or Control key down, come over to the preview and click, and can you see that it's selected? We see our ants marching, okay? Now we want to hit Command or Control C for copy. If you ever wanted to see the shortcuts up here at our file menu, if you go to Edit, you can see there's Cut, Copy, there's lots of different options, and right next to it, it tells you what the shortcuts are. So I've got that copied, and what I want to do now is make a new layer, and I'm going to call this one Cotopaxi VP for vanishing point. I don't need to put anything in there yet because that's where I'll be pasting in. Now, since my ants are still marching, I need to deselect. So Control or Command D, so this isn't selected anymore. And I'm actually going to go ahead and turn the original one off. Okay, so this is where we want to be before we go back into vanishing point. So pause, rewind, do whatever you need, but let's go ahead and meet back at our vanishing point filter. Filter, Vanishing Point. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So here's what we're working with. And on your screen, it might actually look like this. It might take up your whole screen. That's what you might be seeing. I'm going to go ahead and reduce mine down again. Either way, it works. But what I'd like you to do is once you're in here, go ahead and hit Control V or paste, right? Or Command V, either one. And it's going to paste the Cotopaxi logo in here. And what you want to do is take it and drag it towards the vanishing point. And I know this looks really odd right now because it takes the whole thing and just fills it into the vanishing point. That's because I selected the whole building face. If I just made it, as big as the top part, it would have only done it that big. But since I did the whole building, it's trying to fit it through the whole building. Now, if we were in our regular screen, we could just hit Command or Control T, and we can do that same thing here. We can go ahead and start squishing this down to make it fit. So I'm just transforming it and moving it. And the thing that's great is it automatically does the perspective for us too. So with some of this, you just kind of have to eyeball to see what looks right for you. It shouldn't be too distorted. And I think that looks pretty good right there. And then once you're done transforming, hit enter. Now I know I did that pretty fast, but remember we've got pause and rewind for a reason. I'm going to do that one more time on the other side of the building using the Do Good logo that Cotopaxi also uses, and then we're going to add some advanced effects too. So you'll notice here, this pasted into Cotopaxi VP or Vanishing Point. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and do one more group. And this one I'm going to call the Do Good logo. And we're essentially starting that same process again. So first let's go to our Do Good JPEG. I grab the thumbnail and I drag it over. And you can also do the right click duplicate, whatever works for you. And I'm going to begin by transforming to about the size I want it to be. So I'm going to kind of help Photoshop here. Okay, this looks about right. We get it to about the scale it should be, and then I'm going to hit enter. And now I have to go back to the vanishing point because so far I have the vanishing point on this face of the building, but not that face. What I want to do is add my vanishing point to this face of the building. So I'm going to go up to Filter, Vanishing Point, and when I zoom in, you can see that I've got this vanishing point still here, but what I'd like to do is add it to this side. Now before, the way that it worked is we needed to be on Create Plane tool, and we can come and we can click the different points and it'll create it for us just like it did before. I'm going to do Control Z. There's one other way that you can do it that's kind of cool. You can select one of your vanishing points, and if you hit the Create Plane and then go to one of these points here, if you hold the Command or Control, let's try, it's the Alt key, I'm sorry, if you hold the Alt key, it actually duplicates it at a 90-degree angle. So whichever one works for you. And remember, sometimes it just doesn't see it to begin with. There we go. Now it sees it. And before, because we had the whole building face, it took our image and put it in the whole building face. I'm actually going to scale this face down. And I'm using these bricks as guides. These bricks are kind of showing me the vanishing points, and those are definitely lined up. Now it'll make it so that when we paste it in just a moment, that it'll paste it into this area only. Okay, then once that looks good, go ahead and hit enter. Now we're back here. So now we have to start where we were at the Cotopaxi logo. So remember, we want to preserve one of these. So I'm going to rename this Do Good OG for the original, because once we transform it, it'll be really hard to get it back to a square like this. And I want to duplicate this. So I'm going to hit the Command key and click on it. And remember that just selects the logo, so I'm going to hit Command C. That copied it. I'm going to hit Control D or Command D to deselect it. Now I don't have my ants marching. Now before we paste it into our vanishing point, let's put it on a new layer. And this one will be Do Good VP, vanishing point. Let's turn this one off. Okay, make sure you've deselected. And after you've copied it, you've deselected, you have your new layer, now we can go back to Filter, Vanishing Point, and let's see how this one acts. It should act a little differently because I just have a smaller portion. So Command or Control V to paste, and you see always paste it up here, but I drag it down into the vanishing point. Little better, still kind of big, but better than it was before. And I just want to make this smaller. And again, I move it around so I can find all those toggle points. And this one, I can actually just decide if I want to have all this blue space at the top. I guess since it's Cotopaxi's logo, that's what they wanted. So I'll go ahead and keep it. I'm actually covering up one of the lights, so I can decide if I want to cover up a light or scooch it down so that the light isn't covered. I'll go ahead and cover up the light. Okay. Then once that looks good, hit Enter to apply the change, and it just kind of kicks you back out. And it looks like I can just kind of move this down a tiny bit. Okay. And that's how you can add a vanishing point to these two images. And I'd like to do one other thing, actually a couple more things. I'm going to do one other thing with the vanishing points. I'd actually like to add some text so I can put art space here. Like, I know it's art space, you may not have known it was art space. So we're going to add one more vanishing point here so that we can add the text art space. So I'm going to go back into my vanishing point. And just like before, I'm going to click on this over here to create a plane tool. And I'm going to trace out this face of the building. I don't exactly know where it's going to go, but it's going to be pretty close to here. And again, I can just use the stripes of the brick to kind of fake where that vanishing point would be going. Oh, and it got that one right away. That's great. And in case you ever need to see more grids, down on grid size, if you increase them, you can see there's less blue lines, but if I go down, you can see that it'll add pretty much as many as you need. So with this one, I'm going to go down to about 10. So it's actually almost 11. But there's more vanishing points to help me add my text. And let's go ahead and minimize that. Now we're going to be working with text for the first time, and it's pretty straightforward, so I don't think I need to explain much, especially if you've used like Microsoft Word or anything. As long as you've composed an email or written a paper, you should know how this works. So if I hit text, what it wants me to do is draw a text box. So I click and drag, and this is my text box, and by default it fills it up with text for me. So I've used this quite a bit, so it's filling it up with the text I used before. To be honest, I don't remember what the default is, but while you're here, go ahead and just copy what I have. So I've used Century Gothic, or another one would be Arial. Like, let's use Arial Bold. I think just about everybody has Arial Bold. And I think 48 point is great. So go ahead and make it 48 point. So Arial Bold 48 up here. And once you've changed it, let me also, my text is blue. I don't think you need to change this. I'm going to make mine black just to match yours. And now we're going to type in art space. So it puts in this kind of like garbage. I just hit backspace and I type in art space. That's all we need. Okay, so get art space in there. Again, if you didn't get that the first time, go ahead and rewind, try it again. But in a nutshell, we want art space in black to put on this building over here. Now what we're going to do is similar to what we did with Cotopaxi and Do Good. So this is our art space sign. So we're going to make a new group. I'm going to pull it out of there. I'm going to call this art space logo. I'm going to drag that in there as well. And this is going to be art space OG. Because remember, once it's gone and transformed, we can't get it back. So I always like to preserve something of the original that we can come back to. And this is where we have the review. So how do you copy clip a layer? Remember, just Command and click on the thumbnail. You can see it's grabbed art space. And now we hit Command or Control C. Make sure to deselect. Okay, we don't want to keep it selected. And before we paste it in, let's paste it into a new layer. And this one is called Art Space VP. So it's really that same thing. We're just doing a quick review of it. I'm going to turn this one off so I don't get confused as to which one I'm working with. And what we're going to do is go to Filter, Vanishing Point. And hopefully you remember what comes next. Give you a second to think about it. We paste it in. So Command or Control V, there's art space. So if I pop it in there, it'll eventually fit, but I actually want to transform it. And here's one thing that's nice. If I come out, you can see that I get the curved arrow, so I can grab it and flip it. It kind of lets me know when it's straight. It kind of locks into the straight position. Make it a little bit smaller. That is quite huge. And it's up to you to decide, you know, like the perspective will be right, but you get to decide kind of like how wide the font is. It's starting to look a little squatty to me. Let me line it up between these windows. I think that'll look good. Window to window. Yep, I'll call that good. So I hit enter. So there's my art space logo. We've got our two Cotopaxis. So that pretty much does it for the transformations. And you can see art space VP, the art space OG is still preserved. And we're actually going to do one more part of this video. So you can go ahead and pause or stop at this point, but we're going to come back and add a couple more effects and adjustments to make this look even better. See you guys in just a minute.